Hey guys, it's Soraya here. Welcome back to my channel. So today I have for you my, I want to say boy obsessed romance recs, but there is a girl in here too. So we'll say main character obsessed romance recs. Maybe? I don't know. We'll have to come up with a name for that. But yeah, so let's just go ahead and get started. I have my iPad here. Let's go. So the first book I have here is Until I Get You by Claire Contreras. And this one I feel like has kind of taken BookTube by storm. It's everywhere. And this one follows Lachlan and Lila. And Lachlan is like a hockey star at his college. And he ends up meeting Lila one night at a party. And he becomes obsessed with her. She is kind of not like any of the other girls he's met. She's very standoffish. She doesn't want to get in a relationship with any guys or involved period with any guys. And so he immediately like gravitates towards her and decides she's going to be his. And from that point on, he is following her around, doing whatever it takes to get her attention. And then once he finally does get with her, something happens, and then you have, I think it's like a 10-year, I want to say 10, it might be 5. It's a good time jump in between there where something has happened, they've broken up, and Lila has moved somewhere else, and Lachlan ends up running into her, and from that point on, he decides she's his, no one else can have her. If anybody's gonna ruin her life, it's gonna be him, and that's just the end of it. This story was so good. Trigger warnings for sexual assault, physical assault, non-consent, not between the main characters, by the way. So just in case that's like a no-go for some people, that's not part of that. Okay, so after that is the book that basically inspired this whole video, or inspired me to do this video, and that is The Ritual by Chantal Tessier. This book, so it's been on my TBR for forever. Before a bunch of people even started reading it, I had already had it on my TBR because I had read, oh, what did I read? I read Cross by Chantal Tessier, and I loved it. It was so good. And I found The Ritual, and so I said, oh, well, I'm gonna read it, and then everybody started reading it. And when people start reading a book and it becomes super popular, I just kind of don't get to it as fast as I would like to. So I just kind of put it off, and I said, oh, I'll get to it eventually. And so I finally picked it up. And so this one follows Riot and Blakely. And basically what ends up happening is they go to the same school, and Blakely has a boyfriend, but her boyfriend treats her basically like crap. And it's pretty much set in stone that one day they're gonna get married. Like, their parents know it, everyone knows it, their friends know it. It's pre-decided by their parents that they are one day gonna get married. And around this school, there's like a society of guys. Oh, I can't even remember what they're called. So her boyfriend is a part of this group, but he never wants her around any of the other guys, and she doesn't really understand it. Well, she ends up going to one of these parties, and she finds out that her boyfriend has been cheating on her. And at that same time, she's caught the attention of Riot, who used to be her boyfriend's best friend until something happened, and now they're kind of like enemies. And Riot, in the very beginning of the book, is given the task to make Blakely his chosen. Now, in this world, your chosen is basically your, not necessarily your girlfriend, but kind of your girlfriend. She's basically like your person, your girl, and she's supposed to do whatever you want her to do. It doesn't matter whether you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a significant other or whatever. Your chosen is your chosen. From Blakely being angry with her boyfriend, she decides to be Riot's chosen. And the story kind of goes from there. I don't want to tell you too much more, but it's a lot of twists and turns and plot twists. It gets kind of crazy at a point. It's crazy, but it's crazy enough that you want to keep reading it, if that makes sense. I hope it does, because it was great. I gave it 5 stars, if you can't tell. All right. So the next book on this list is another one of my favorites, and that is Lovely Bad Things by Trisha Wolfe. This book, I started off the year with this book, and I have no regrets at all. At all. It was fantastic, which I knew it would be because I like Trisha Wolfe's other series. Oh, I can't. The Darkly Madly duet. I read that ages ago, like a long time ago, and I loved it. And this one has like a similar vibe. So basically, you follow Helen, who is a psychological analyst of murder scenes for the FBI. And she ends up getting an assignment. Well, no, let me take it back. So the beginning of the story, you meet her, and she's not on trial, but she's in a trial to prosecute Callum. Now, Callum is a professor for a college, and he has, according to Helen, all of the typical psychopathic serial killer tendencies. He's very narcissistic. He's very one-track minded, very focused. He is antisocial. So when she goes to the stand to prosecute him, she gives all of these characteristics of Callum and why she believes that the professor killed at this college, Callum killed him. And so where the story starts off, Callum is sent to prison, well, sent to a psychiatric facility for the murder of this professor. And then you flash forward 6 months where Helen has gotten an assignment in this small town where people are being murdered. This town has had people disappearing for months now. And Helen decides that Callum, who he was like specializing in like the occult or something like that, and she believes that he can help her solve who is committing these murders. And so she pulls some strings, she gets him into this town as her like expert, not expert witness, but like expert in the field. And things kind of go off from there because Helen is also very attracted to Callum, and Callum is obsessed with Helen to the point where it's crazy. And she knows it's crazy, but she still wants him anyway. It's, the story, the plot twists, the turns. I loved it so much. I also have read the second book to go along with this because it's a series. I think it's going to be a trilogy, but I'm not sure. But yeah, so good. So good. I loved it so much. Okay, so next I have Killers and Monsters, which is the second book in the Three Fates Mafia series by Cleo Evans. And this one is a poly relationship, and it gets a little weird because one of the main characters is a dragon, or a dragon shifter. Technically, he's a dragon. He's a dragon for most of the book, or like partial dragon. But he can shift between like a normal man, a partial dragon, and then a full dragon. But you do get some dragon sexcapades in here, so just keep that in mind. But so you follow Serena, who has been arranged by her uncle to marry Ian. And Ian is a mafia boss, and he's the dragon shifter. And so when she's sent to marry Ian, she brings along with her her bodyguard, her own personal bodyguard, Luca. And Luca is obsessed with Serena. And you find out very quickly that his obsession borders on crazy psychopath. It gets a little crazy. But so she marries Ian, and then she is basically stuck in this house for 10 years. and he rarely comes to see her. He sees her maybe once or twice a year in the 10 years she's been living in this house. So it's just been her and Luca, and throughout those 10 years, the sexual tension has been building and building and building between the two of them. And then in the very beginning of the story, Luca comes and he tells her, your husband is coming and he wants you. And so he's decided to like finally claim you after 10 years. And things just kind of get wild from there. But I loved it. I read it so fast. I think I read it overnight. I want to say overnight or like in a day. It was quick. It only took me a couple hours. It was so good. It was so good. So basically it's a throuple between Ian, who's the mob boss, Luca, who's the bodyguard, and then Serena. All right, next I have also one of my favorite books I've read so far this year, which is Raw by Bella Aurora. And this one is very dark, so just keep that in mind. I also want to say this one does not end in an HEA. I gotta put that out there because I feel like a lot of people don't tell you that, and I think they don't tell you because they're afraid it's going to be spoilers, and I guess it is a little spoilery, but it's not. It is, but it isn't. It doesn't end in an HEA. You do have to read not the second book, because the second book follows different characters, but you do have to read the third book, which I didn't read the second book. I just read the first book and the third book because they follow pretty much the same characters, which is Raw Rebirth. So you do have to read that. So keep that in mind. I mean, they're not super long, but I just want to let you know before you get into it. So it follows Twitch. Why did my brain just blank out on that? So it follows Twitch and Lexi, and Twitch is stalking Lexi because he believes that she is part of the reason why his life has been so awful. And now, I can't tell you why he believes that, but he does. And so you start off the story, and Lexi is a social worker. She is living in Australia. She moved to Australia with her foster mom when she was 18, and from there she decided to become a social worker because she was in the system, and so she wanted to work so that other kids didn't end up in that same situation. So she's basically living her dream life. I guess you call it her dream life. The only thing she's missing is love, which she's not really looking for it, to be exact. So it's not really much of a hardship for her. And it's them falling in love, him begrudgingly, her not really understanding why she's in love with this random guy that she doesn't really know. And she doesn't really think about how much she doesn't know about him until the story kind of progresses. And she realizes, like, hey, these are the things he's never told me. So it's interesting. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved the second one. I don't think I loved the second one as much as I loved the first one, but I did love them both. It gets very wild, so keep that in mind. Trigger warnings for sexual assault, physical assault, domestic violence, dubious consent. I think that's it. There might be more, but just check the author's website for trigger warnings. I also think it's in the beginning of the book, but it's been a hot minute since I read it. So just keep that in mind when you're reading this, that it is very dark. So next I have a wild book. So if you read the description of this book, you will understand why I say it's such a wild book. And that is Morally Corrupt by Veronica Lancet. So Morally Corrupt follows Bianca and Theo. Now, you start off the book from Bianca's point of view, where she is an assassin for the mob. An assassin for hire, but she's been working singularly with the Russian mafia for a while now. You start out the story where she is trying to protect her husband, Theo, who is the police commissioner. Now, you might say, how does that make sense? Well, he doesn't know that she's an assassin. He thinks she's this super quiet, submissive wife, and she is not. She is basically, because you're getting it from her perspective, you're hearing why she behaves the way she does, which a lot of it is because she believes that's what he likes. So she's like watched him, she's done her research, and she knows this is the kind of woman he's looking for, and she's decided to become that woman. And it's crazy because she knows what she's doing is not normal behavior, but she's kind of accepted it because it's just who she is. And this is the book, by the way, where it's not boy obsessed, it's girl obsessed. And she is literally obsessed with her husband. Before she ever met him, married him, or officially met him, I should say, rather, or married him, she stalked him. Like, she saw him one time and immediately she knew she wanted him, and that was it. He was going to be hers. This story has so many interesting, like, twists and turns because nobody in this story is who you think they are. Like, nobody. There's no one person in this story who is actually who they start off in the beginning of the book. So, like, you have Veronica. You think she's just a normal housewife? She's killing people for hire. Okay? And I don't want to tell you anymore because spoilers, but nobody is who they pretend to be in this book. And it was so good. It was so good. I did not see it coming, but I thought it would just be like interesting fallout between them because obviously she's a killer and he's the police commissioner, but no, that's just the tip of the iceberg here. Okay? Alright. Now, next I have God of Wrath, which technically you should probably read all of the books, but I'm not gonna lie, I only read God of Wrath in this series so far by Rena Kent, and I wasn't really lost or anything, so take that as you will. But this one follows Jeremy and Cecily, and basically Cecily is doing a favor for her best friend and her crush Landon, and he asked her to basically infiltrate this group of guys who go to, I can't remember what the school is, but it's the rival school to the Royal Elite. So she dresses up in a disguise and attends this party, and Jeremy is one of the guys in this group who her friend Landon doesn't like. Well, basically he's like the leader of the group. And she goes and she thinks she got away with it. She just snuck in. She's gonna sneak out. It doesn't work that way, and she ends up getting caught by Jeremy. And from that point on, he decides that he wants her and she's gonna be his. The story just kind of takes some turns. There is consensual non-consent in here, or dubious consent, however you want to call it. He is definitely borderline psychopath, but it's one of those situations where he doesn't like anybody except for her, and I was here for it. I was here for it. I didn't really care about anything else. I was just here for it. Next story is a little bit harder to explain without spoiling. So it's Little Lies by Helena Hunting. And this one, I questioned whether or not I wanted to put it on this list because it is hard to explain without spoiling some of the plot twists in here. But basically it follows Lavender and Kodiak. And Lavender and Kodiak, when they were kids, used to be best friends. Like, everything seemed great. And Kodiak is her older brother's best friend, by the way. And so things seemed great. And then all of a sudden, he just cut her off and just stopped talking to her, or was really mean to her whenever they were around each other. And she couldn't understand what she had done wrong, that he didn't care about her anymore, basically. So you flash forward 4 years, I think it is. It's either 4 years or 6 years, and she is attending college, and she ends up having to stay with her brothers in their like house, and then Kodiak's house ends up catching fire and so he comes to stay with them as well. And so it's like a forced proximity type thing where they have to live together. Well, they don't have to, but everybody else is kind of like well, he could just stay there for a little bit and finish things out, and then he could go back home, or he could find somewhere else to stay. And so she kind of begrudgingly agrees. It's a situation where it forces them to confront what happened in their past and why they no longer talk to each other, or why they set out to hurt each other anymore. He is definitely obsessed with her. She just doesn't know it. And there are reasons for it. And I think this book, the reason why I really enjoyed it anyway, was it brings up great topics on mental health. And if you don't know, I went to school and got my bachelor's degree in psychology. So mental health is something that I really enjoy and really like taking a look into. And this book definitely promotes therapy and working on your mental health, and the fact that you need to work on your mental health to be the best you, if that makes sense. And I don't want to tell you more because spoilers, but it's really good, and it hit all the feels, and I think it was something that was definitely necessary to be talked about and looked into, and all the things. I also like that it takes a look at the fact that parents mess up. You know, no parent is perfect, and no parent does everything completely perfect. And this book definitely focuses on the fact that parents can make mistakes just as easily as kids can. And you set out as a parent to do the right thing, and the right thing is not always the right thing. What's right for you might not necessarily be what's right for your kid. And I think that is a big topic of this book. All right, we're down to our last two. So I'm going to do my favorite one out of the two last, because we just have to. But so the next one is Psychopath's Prey by V.F. Mason. And this one is definitely a psychopathic stalker story. And I feel like a lot of these that I'm telling you about follow like psychologists or medical, or not medical, or therapist, or that kind of thing, someone in the psychology field. But I feel like if you have an obsessed person in your story, like that just goes hand in hand sometimes with romances. But anyway, so this one follows Ella, and when Ella was, I want to say she was 16, her whole family was murdered by a serial killer. And it took a few years for them to find out who the serial killer was. I don't want to tell you because that's just a whole thing. But basically she went out, she snuck out one night when she wasn't supposed to, and she came home and both of her parents were murdered, as well as her sister was found in the basement. Not only was she murdered, but she was sexually assaulted. And from that point on, Ella decided to make it her mission to join the FBI by like any means necessary. But because of her background, nobody would allow her to be an actual agent in the FBI. And so she kind of went in a roundabout way, and she got her degree in psychology and ended up becoming a psychoanalyst for the FBI instead. And she doesn't expect to get the job because she's been turned down so much, but she randomly gets a call and they offer her the position. So as soon as she gets there, she gets her first assignment of a serial killer who is killing people, and they're basically leaving their calling card for her. And they know where she lives, they're leaving stuff outside of her door. And they're basically having a cat and mouse game with her of, can you find me? Or can you guess who I am? And she knows it's someone close to her, but she doesn't know who. And so as I was reading this, I literally had like 3 suspects of who it could be. And I'm not going to tell you more than that because it wasn't what I was expecting, but then it was exactly what I was expecting. And it's hard to explain more than that, but it gets kind of crazy. It's interesting too because you also get the serial killer or the psychopath, because that's what they call him. But you get the psychopath perspective throughout the story, and you get to see like his thought process and why he's doing the things he does and how he views her. I do think like in the beginning it felt kind of slow for me, but as the story went on it picked up and I enjoyed it even more. And the last book I have on this list is Haunting Adeline by H.T. Carlton. I had to think about that one. And I feel like this book is everywhere, but it's one of my favorites. I read it either early last year or the end of 2021. I can't even remember, but it was easily one of my favorite books. So it follows Addie, and she is an author who has just moved into her grandmother's house because her grandmother passed away and she left her this gothic manor. And so she moves in because she knows her grandmother loves the house, and otherwise her mother would have sold the house. So she knows the house is haunted. She's always known that since she was a kid. But as she's there, strange things start happening. She can tell somebody's been in the house because they're leaving like glasses with their drink in it, and they're just leaving them on the counter. So she knows somebody's in there. And then one day she looks out her window and she sees a man standing outside of her window just watching her. And where most people would, hide, close their curtains, all the things, of course she runs out the door and kind of antagonizes the man. And that man is Zaid. And Zaid is obsessed with Addie. I don't want to tell you too much about what he does because I feel like that's a bit of a spoiler. But basically, Zaid, his mission in life is to rid the world of the bad people, the murderers, the rapists, the molesters, all of those people. And that's his mission. That's his whole life's work. And he knows, logically, he knows that what he's doing with her is not what you should be doing. But he's so obsessed with her that he doesn't really care whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing. He's going to do it anyway. And this story is one of my favorites. This book is dark, but it's not crazy dark. The second one in the duet is way darker, so keep that in mind. I mean, in this first one, you do get some things going into unmentionable areas that should not be going there. I'm not gonna lie, but and you do get some like limbs cut off, typical crazy person things. But the second one is way darker, so just know that going into this, and it does end on a cliffhanger as well, so that's also a thing. So that's all the books on this list. As usual, I'll leave all of the books linked down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and subscribe if you want to, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye guys!